I think the average retirement age right now is like 67.
I think I have that app on my phone. Let's see if I can use it.
Everything that happened during that visit, that assistant would type it in, it would all be in there. And this AI will be able to do that.
Well, hi, Chris Grant. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Myrna. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm not as good as you because I've not just come back from Belize, but I'm really happy that you're back and we can have this conversation. It's wonderful to be able to talk to a segment of the population that is sometimes ignored. But I have an aging parent, and you have had aging parents and in-laws, and all of the complex circumstances that surround that. It's so helpful to know advocates like you exist. So before we get going, Eagle Crest Consulting is your firm.
Correct. Eagle Crest Consulting is my consulting firm, and it's geared towards helping businesses in the senior care and also individuals seeking knowledge of what to do with their aging parents, what not to do, that type of thing. Yeah.
Well, and on the human side of things, having navigated this for your own family members, in-laws, and parents who went through an aging process, you learned the kind of tough decisions that have to be made, the emotional impact that it has, and the fact that that landscape is ever changing. The Medicare regulations, what's happening with pharma, what's available to have in your home, if you want to keep them at home, or do they need to be in a memory care unit because you can't, lock them inside your house. So you have walked that walk, and it has brought you a lot of insight.
Yes. Yes, but and personally and then professionally as well, because I was kind of both were happening at the same time, so I got to see it from both ends, which really helped me build up a really good idea in my head of just how all of it fits together. Because you can't separate one service from another. They all fit together and work together. And there's a sequence that you would go through depending on what the conditions are. Every case is different. Every aging person is different. Every family is different. So there's no one size fits all solution to any of this.
What's nice is that when you're talking to someone who has the experience you have, the expertise, is you could say, okay, we've got stasis with mom or dad right now, whatever situation has been set up. When this doesn't work anymore,
Right.
what is the next step? Can you forecast some things I should be thinking about or preparing for after this stops working? The memory care has gotten worse, or they're not mobile anymore, or they can't manage all their daily life skills. Then at that intersection, what are our choices? So you can help people
Right.
prepare for what may be on the horizon while they settle into what they're working with right now.
Absolutely, and I like the way you phrased that, choices. There are many, many choices. A lot of people, not so much now, people are getting a little more savvy about it, but there's still plenty of people that, we're going to keep mom at home with us for as long as possible before we have to stick her in a nursing home.
Mhm.
That's like, going from 0 to 10. Or 0 to 100. There's 99 steps in between that,
Mhm.
can be taken. And I love educating people about what those are, what they're good for, what they're not good for, what needs to be paid for, privately, which is of course most of it, and what can be handled by, the medical, insurance, Medicare, that type of thing.
Well, and my mom is aging, and she got like the last platinum long-term care, long-term health, and that policy's not sold anymore. And so, because it's bankrupting them, you say the insurance companies, we're in a silver tsunami. And
Right.
so, as this population ages, what are you finding be someone who works with that population? You work with individuals, and you also work with the agencies who are supporting those individuals. You want to share with us your bird's eye view of the silver tsunami?
So first, let's describe what the silver tsunami is. So what is the silver tsunami? Massive wave of aging baby boomers, basically. The latest statistics, and I brought this up on my computer, so I didn't have to memorize it. 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day.
Wow.
You know,
That's a small town.
in about 4 years from now, quote unquote baby boomers, if you pay attention to those that definition are all going to be 65 and over.
Wow.
Um, the fastest growing segment within that is the people who are currently about 85 years old.
I see.
I remember when I was a kid, I had a grandmother who was 65, and I was thinking, boy, that's old, right? But 65 is not as old as it used to be.
Mhm.
It's not as old as it used to be. People, aren't retiring at 62 much anymore.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
they're more than, I think the average retirement age right now is like 67.
Yeah, I think the Social Security Administration is trying to encourage people to look at 70 to before they start drawing benefits, to try to
Well, of
extend the
course,
life of that Social Security. So I think, 65 is the new 50 or something, People get older than maybe our parents or the parents before us did.
people are living longer, they're living healthier, and finances, which we'll get into, I'm sure, at some point, are a huge part of this. And the more people that are paying into Social Security for a longer time makes that pile of money bigger and stronger, and that can help more people in the long run. So encouraging people to not retire, and they're able to work. I mean, people are still they're able to work past the age of 65 these days, as compared to not as many could 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
So much work is informational work, and you can work remotely, so you're not, taking the train or the bus into the factory, so you're not, fewer and fewer people are doing jobs that require physical labor in an information economy. You can turn on your computer at home and have the same job at 50 as you do at 60, right? So.
Yes, you can, and that technology is certainly a part of it. And certainly one of the places that we all see some retired people out there, like they're like greeters at Walmart or something. So there are other things that you can do if you're not computer savvy, where you just don't want or just really need to get out of the house, that kind of thing. So
Some
there
people
are.
really want that human contact every day.
That's very important, especially in the information age with so much. I mean, like here, you and me are doing an interview here on Zoom. And
Mhm.
that's great. It's really convenient for us. But one-on-one together interview is
Mhm.
is a different thing. I love Zoom and other video interfaces because it's kind of a juxtaposition between being on the phone and
Mhm.
being in person, and it really helps a lot of people connect that otherwise couldn't connect.
Well, I feel like we're the Jetsons, now that you can have FaceTime on your phone, or the Dick Tracy watch, do Dick Tracy
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
So, yeah, it feels like the future. And kids are born cable ready anymore. They're using iPhones at 5, or whatever. They're just natural users. Where I am one of the boomers, where I have to say, I think I have that app on my phone. Let's see if I can use it. I go through
Oh,
steps where
exactly.
other people do it unconsciously.
Yeah.
So, well, talk about things that are changing. Do you want to talk about this transition in healthcare? I hear about rural hospitals closing. There was a story in the news this week about the largest yacht ever to head down to Mar-a-Lago. And because it was so big, people were taking pictures of it for the news. And the person who owns the yacht bought a lot of rural hospitals with venture capital money and then closed them. And I don't know what the, financial wrangling of that was, but he used his proceeds to buy the largest yacht in the world. And now it's parked outside Mar-a-Lago. So, there's been a corporate financial attitude about healthcare that's not really a human driven or a care driven attitude. I think we might be able to say that about pharma also. And so, as these knock on effects of, first COVID, and then you hear about people who go 150 miles for their OB/GYN appointments because there's no local rural hospital that can get an insurer to allow them to provide, OB/GYN care. So the network of insurance and care providers and facilities and equipment, my goodness, it's a lot to navigate.
It's a ton to navigate, and that's I hadn't seen that story myself, but it's not an unusual scenario. My offhand guess would be that consolidate, there's a lot of consolidation going now. Did he sell those hospitals individually to a big hospital, system, national hospital system, or did they just get closed down so that would force the people to go to a major hospital in their area, like you said, that's 25 miles.
Yeah, it's some kind of
Yeah.
overall debt.
In this country, the healthcare system is so highly privatized that it's driven by money. Other countries that have socialized medicine have a completely different ball game. We live in America. That's what's going on right now. So how can we have to navigate what's happening right now in reality. So
Well, yeah, and I think having someone as you, like a navigator, to say, okay, what's going on with mom and dad, or from on the retail end, not the actually patient-centric end, but the provider end. We're running a hospice agency, and we have 3 locations. And I think in the facilities that I looked at for my mom, most of them had, based on your ability to do your daily tasks, how mobile you were, and then memory care. There were like 3 segments, and people
right,
were back and forth. And if you had to go have a surgery and rehab, you might be in a different segment and then back to the first one once you were up and about again. So,
right.
and then it seems like it's a patchwork quilt of different things based on what's happening in the healthcare of the actual person you care about who's getting the care. But there are a lot of technological advances, and you just don't have any idea. We're not senior doctors, we're family members, and the healthcare providers make investments in equipment. You are participating in the durable equipment space. And so you make some of that available to agencies and providers of care. And while that marches forward, that's new investment for those agencies to provide better care. So it's a lot to stay on top of, Chris.
It really is, you did mention the type of facility. They like to call them communities, especially
Okay.
independent living, assisted living, memory cares. They like to
Hmm.
call them communities
Okay.
because they really are, the good ones really are. That's their home now. A
Hmm.
facility is like a hospital is a facility, a rehab is a facility, a
Not a place where
system
you
is a
live.
facility.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And what you were talking about is a number of services under one roof. If they have all 4 services, meaning independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing all under one roof, that's called the CCRC, stands for Continuing Care Retirement Community. My mother put herself into one of those,
Okay.
which is very unusual for somebody to have that planned that far ahead. And
Hmm.
I'll tell a quick story about that. So, me and my sister never had to do anything drastic at all to help my mother with the aging puzzle because had it all figured out. She,
Wow.
she was a pre-planner. She had it all figured out. And all my sister had to do was go visit her, once or twice a week and, have her over for dinner and stuff like that. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, complete opposite, didn't plan anything. Every time we tried to talk to her about it, she goes, "Oh, I don't need to think about that just yet." And
Hmm.
then one day her memory started going. It started with her, getting lost when she's out driving. And I'm living in Texas, and my mother-in-law is living in North Carolina, and she calls me and she says, "I'm out driving and I don't know where I am." She calls me. Well, I don't know where she is either.
You're pre-programmed in her phone. She probably just hit one number,
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's able to call me, but she doesn't. She never got in with the technology enough to use the GPS on her phone. And she has a car. She had a car. Well, she doesn't have the car anymore. She had the car that could that you could connect it to your phone, and the map
Yes.
can show right on the dashboard and all that stuff. But she
Uh,
never learned how to use it because in her mind she wasn't
she wasn't that far gone, right? She didn't need
but
that
no,
level of
I
support.
don't need that, and so really, so and those, it's interesting that I experienced those 2 extreme,
Right, both ends of the spectrum.
and more people are somewhere in between. It's a really good idea. People our age, we have aging parents, and having that conversation with them to A lot of them don't want to be told what to do or this or that. So the approach would be a little bit different. It's like, I know you don't want to think about this or talk about this, but can we talk about it for my peace of mind? I don't want to, get up in the middle of the night worried about you. And if I know that you have a plan, I'll be less worried. And that's a good way to approach it. But again, this is why I like to talk to individuals. Every single family is different.
Yeah.
Every some aging, parents, and I'm not talking about people that are 65. To me, 65 is still middle-aged,
Sure.
right?
Well, a lot of 65-year-olds are working. Well, ring the bell, you're 65, now retire. One of the things I wanted to talk about is I haven't had the stress that you may have had with your mother-in-law, but my mom was very reluctant to leave her home and she kept falling. And the doctor finally said, I'm going to take the choice away from you and I'm sending you to a rehabilitation facility. And until they give me a high sign, you're not going home. And she's like, I live in a free country. He said, not right now, you don't, because you cannot be safe on your own. So she went and she said, I guess I'm going to have to find a facility to live in. And so, we did. But it took that level of kind of non-family intervention to say, you fall all the time. They're going to come in and find you gone because you fell. And even though she had care coming into the house, nobody could be with her 24/7,
Right.
And so she actually had to face that fact. And there's a grieving process that the person goes through about this part of my life is over. I wasn't ready for it to be over. And I'm
Right.
ready to live in a beehive full of other old people. That's what she called it. I'm moving into the beehive full of other old bees.
Yes.
But this is a way for you to be safe. But there is a surrender of independence. And we didn't pick the time or choosing of when this would happen. 3 times in 1 week to the hospital because she fell, and the doctor said, that's it, you can't live on your own. So
Right.
whatever that line is that gets crossed, where a decision has to be made, not only is the person maybe grieving their independence or disoriented about waking up at a place, and ringing a bell to let them know you're ready to eat. I mean, it's a whole different way of living that you're now suddenly learning all these new things instead of how you've lived for so long. The children, adult children or other family members, are having to navigate it too, all of the emotional fallout of that. What can we do for you, mom or spouse or aunt or, whatever the relationship is, to add how to get Medicare to send the equipment or how to get the insurance to pay for this stuff or how to get all the medicine over to the new place. If you have an advocate for that, there's some bandwidth for all the emotional stuff that's going to come no matter what.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then that's you brought up a number of really good points. You're talking about it was the doctor that sent her to the rehab. So
Mhm.
out outsourcing the emotional, trauma is one
Mhm.
thing. For example, my mother-in-law, she couldn't. It was not safe for her to drive anymore.
Mhm.
Right. So what I did is I took her to the tech. We had her moved here to Texas, and I took her down to the DMV to get her license switched over from North Carolina to Texas. And of course, they had to give her the test. She couldn't pass the test, so they
So
denied
it's
her
a
a
third
license.
party now that's made this
So now,
decision.
but she and well, with the dementia, she forgets that.
Yes.
And she goes, "What do you mean I can't drive? I was driving my car just yesterday." "No, you haven't driven your car in 4 years." And that's another thing. Should we orient our mother with dementia to reality, or should we just hang out and talk about old times? And again, every family's different. And so that was a good point, that you brought up. And there are many, many, choices and options, for moving forward. You talked about she was at home and they had people coming in. I don't know if they had like a home care caregiving service coming
Right.
in.
It was 3 hours a day for some food prep and double check the
Right,
medicines and do the, mopping and other things, get the mail.
right,
But she's awake 16 hours a day and she has someone there 3 hours a day. So plenty of
right.
time for things to go wrong.
Plenty of time for things to go wrong, and then there and what kind of technology can we have? I've fallen and I can't get up buttons
Mhm.
that they have to wear around their neck. We tried that with my mother-in-law. She kept taking it off.
Yes.
So we tried the one of the watches, and she's been wearing a lady's watch her whole life, and she
Mm-hmm.
looks at her wrist and sees something there that I guess
Bulky.
at best looks like the wristband that you wear when you go to Disney World or
Mm-hmm.
something, and she goes, "This isn't. I don't like this," and she takes it off and she puts her watch back on. We got her a cell phone specifically designed for people with cognitive impairment, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't occur to her that it does more than just a phone. There's games on there that you can play. There's memory enhancing games that you can play, and probably the biggest downfall to having people with dementia or dementia from Alzheimer's is that they forget how bad their memory is. So they don't remember that you just visited them an hour ago, and then they call and they're mad because I haven't seen you for so long. Say, Mom, we were just there earlier today. And
Mm-hmm.
but I say that to my mother, and she goes, "Oh, you were? Well, I'm sorry." She believes us. Or
Mm-hmm.
others, they're so angry. They say, "If you were here, I would have remembered it." And they're just angry. Um,
That brings up something. I remember my grandmother, she was quite a bit younger than my grandfather. There was like 12 or 15 years difference. She was his second wife. His first wife died in a flu epidemic. And so she had about 20 years of life without her husband. And she had to be in a facility the last 6 years or so because she got mean. She was the sweetest lady, and she spent her life looking after her kids and her neighbors and other people. And she liked being around people, but she started to get really mean and really angry, and she'd never been that way in the bulk of her life. So
right,
she turned into someone we didn't recognize, and she was angry a lot. And my mom got a phone call, maybe month two or month three of her being in a facility, that she'd attacked one of the caregivers, and they had had to restrain her. And she's 90 pounds, looks like a bird, was a sweet old lady. But there was this personality change as she was just decompensing.
right,
She just wasn't herself anymore. And she was mad because the nurse wouldn't call her mother. Well, her mother hadn't been alive in 45 years. And
right.
there was no reasoning with her. We can't call your mother because she's not alive anymore. I don't know why you won't call my mother. So, at some point you need professional people who know what to do with this. And
Yes,
family members do not know what to do. Not only is it brutal to witness it, you don't have the training to know what's best for your person, let alone for you to cope with. And so she had to be in a facility, but she did get violent. And she lived like, another year in a facility. And sometimes when she would get a weekly visit from my mother, she would remember it. And other times, you didn't know who my mother was. And so you just try to do your best. But again, having someone who you can talk to that has been through it, that understands your circumstances, can just put so much ease of mind with the clients that you work with.
absolutely. Because there's no end of the tricks that you can use, the strategies that you can use, the plans that you can use, and I
Mhm.
can give tons of examples from my own life, even
Mhm.
way before, when I was a teenager. And my grandmother was living in I guess they still called them facilities at that time. You
Yeah,
gotta call them communities unless
that's
they're
right. It's a
actually
community now.
actual medical stuff going on. So
Mhm.
she was there, and she got to the point where she didn't remember who we were.
Mhm.
And every time we would go visit her, I would go with my mother to visit her. My mother spent an hour trying to reorient her to reality. She just got more and more and more upset. So
Mhm.
one time we went over there, and this time, and I don't remember whether it was my idea or my mom's idea or if we heard it from somewhere else. Let's just go hang out with her and we'll play Scrabble. For some reason, my grandmother could play Scrabble like nobody's business. So we're sitting, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Chris. This is Katie. My mother's name was Katie, and we're gonna play Scrabble with you." And she goes, "Oh, great!" And we start playing Scrabble. After about an hour, she looks over at us. I don't remember whether it was me or my mother, and she goes, "You're my daughter, aren't you?" After an hour of playing, and my mom said, "Yes, I am." And
Mhm.
she just kind of got a little smile on her face, and we kept playing Scrabble. But that
Mhm.
was the highest quality visit that we had had up to that
Mhm.
point, because she wasn't,
Yeah.
my father had died a few years before that, and and my grandmother would forget about that. She would say, "And well, how's Walter?" And my mom would have to go through, "Well, he died," and she couldn't remember. So now there's tears, like grieving, like she didn't even know, and it's just,
It's Groundhog Day that I have to tell you that your husband has died.
yeah,
Yeah.
that does not enhance, quality of life. So the four most important words in, what should we do, is does this increase or help with quality of life
Mhm.
for that individual? And it could be mostly emotional, like you said, you're, angry. Your grandmother was angry. Well,
Mhm.
it sounds to me, based on just what you said, that the reason that she was so angry because she didn't feel useful anymore. You said
Yes.
she was taking care of the family, she was taking care of the neighborhood.
She always
She
had,
always
she would be
had,
shelling peas. She always had
yeah,
her hands busy. That's
yeah,
how she was raised. And now there's nothing for her to do. You're
right.
exactly right.
And there are things like a good memory care. You will see that they will keep them busy doing things that,
Mhm.
some arts and craftsy stuff, like, busy fun work, but also, stuff, rolling bandages. I mean,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of things that they can do to feel useful. When my grandmother was first put into, and she mostly did this herself, and the staff of course helped, but she wanted it. She basically demanded that they give her a job. So they had her, and her name was Virginia, but she went by Queenie. Her last name was Queensberry, but she went by Queenie. So she said, "Well, I can deliver the internal mail." Like, people would come and they would drop off cards, and everybody had a little, mail slot in their door. And so she would go and she would spend all day. Towards the end, it took her all day just to deliver one card. And she
Mhm.
had she had the card in her hand, and she would read the name and the number, and then she would walk up to a door and see if it matched. Nope, didn't match. Go to the next one. Took her all day to deliver one thing, which,
Mhm.
you say, well, that's just a waste of time. No, she felt useful, and everybody knew her. And if it was the right door, well, maybe they're there, I'll knock on the door. And
Mhm.
everybody knew her. Everybody
Yeah.
just, loved her, and she felt useful. And she did that. We heard later she did that even on her last day of life. She still did that. And,
Well, isn't it
you know,
wonderful when you have someone who has the kind of perspective you have about how do we navigate this for the people involved, as well as the systems and the insurance and what have you in that changing landscape. It's so good to have a guide. And different family members have different ideas. And I think it's really important to put what is the quality of life of the person as the paramount question. Is this contributing to their quality of life?
right,
And we are going to have some people that are planners and some people that won't plan, they refuse to plan. And there we are. And so, yeah, you have to start somewhere, but it's good to have some help. So I know when we were talking earlier, there's an AI component that you're seeing that's creeping in everywhere, including
yes,
into the end of healthcare you're working on. And you see it from I have a person I'm caring for point of view, kind of a patient-centric thing where you say that AI can be a kind of a thought collector or thought organizer for someone. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could be Gemini from your Google app or whatever. Or
right.
on the agency side, it can keep them always audit ready. So, do you want to share your perspective about AI kind of in that senior healthcare space?
Well, yes, certainly an individual, working on taking care of their aging parents can get more information by using, Chat GPT or Gemini as a very sophisticated search tool, but
Mhm.
also an organizational tool. Or, because you can there's so much information out there that it can become overwhelming. So
Mhm.
you could, let's say that you find two or three websites on your own, and you really like, what they all had to say, but there's so much information. So go on ChatGPT or Gemini and said, look at these three websites and summarize the main points, in a bullet point form on one page, so that they can, like, have a little cheat sheet for what to do when this or that happens, that kind of thing. Organizational tool, keeping, my thoughts. I have got some ADHD, right? So it's not, I've always used notebooks and notes my whole life. And certainly the way that my chat GBT works is I've got the version that you pay, I don't know, $20 a month, a month for, and it keeps every single one of our conversations. So if I said, what was that thing we talked about, it's still there. It
Yeah.
keeps the whole
Its
conversation.
memory doesn't fade.
And that's really useful. Gemini does similar. I've just been using ChatGPT, so
Well, it
much.
was the first one we had access to, so everybody cut their
Yeah,
teeth on ChatGPT.
yeah. But I'm getting into other ones and what they're good for. So the other side, what can the providers do, using AI? So they're already using a lot of technology, EMR, electronic medical records, and CRMs to track their customers, and a lot of those technologies are, putting AI components, in them. Primarily, it seems the best thing they're doing right now is just, noticing patterns and catching mistakes. Like we see that every time made a log for this, you put the date, but you didn't put the date here. And then you go back, oh, I forgot I put the date, and you can go back and fix it, that kind of thing. But that's kind of like a kind of a watchdog kind of thing, which, like you talked about, does help if they, get audited, that they have all their documentation, squared away. Um, Upcoming more and more in technology, what I'm hoping will happen, one of the biggest issues, or the biggest issues from the provider side, is staffing, quality staffing, especially in the especially in home health, and hospice. You need RNs and LVNs and CNAs, certified, nursing assistants, on your staff. So making their jobs easier so that they can do their jobs better is something that AI can definitely help with. The main component I see there, the amount of documentation that they have to do
It's crazy.
in order to satisfy the insurance stuff, which again is a problem that we have in this country because of the insurance industry, which is big, huge money, pharma and insurance, big money. That's with the way our society is working right now. So we have to navigate within that system. So if a CNA or a nurse or something can get their documentation done much, much faster, they can see then more patients. They're less, you ask them what they like about their job, what they don't like about their job. I love visiting people. I love visiting families. I love taking care of it. I hate the documentation. They're willing to do it. It's part of their job. But when AI gets good enough, and you can do voice recordings now. We've been able to do voice recordings since you remember the old tape recorders that we had when we were kids.
Yes, yes.
And you would like record it just to see how, the only reason we did it was to see how funny our voice sounded to us.
Yeah, it sounds wrong. Yeah.
Nowadays we don't, you hear your voice recorded so much, like, I'm going to look back at this and say, yep, that's me. That's what I sound like, because that's what I think I sound like. Anyway, if they're able to do their documentation just verbally, to an AI that can sort what they're saying and because it's filling out the forms. And there's great software out there that's got great forms. Did you see, patient A today? Yes or no? Did you see patient B? Did you do this procedure? And it's a lot of check boxes, and then there's some fill in the blanks with notes of what condition was the house in when you were over there, what condition were they in, what condition was the family in, and anything that needs to go into the care plan and stuff. And it takes time for them to sit in front of their computer. They're usually out, if they're out in the field, they're on a tablet or on their cell phone, and
Right, on the phone between stops.
type on a cell phone. If you've got fingers the size of mine, you have to have a sense of humor when you see what spell check does with some of the things that you type. But once AI gets to the point where they can do it just verbally, they can just, almost like they're talking to, like, if you had an assistant that was sitting there in front of their computer, and you could just tell them everything that happened during that visit, that assistant would type it in, it would all be in there, and this AI will be able to do that.
Yeah.
It um there are people say it can do it now, but it can't do it well enough that you don't have to check to make sure it did it correctly.
Right.
You
And
know,
you don't want to have invalid forms, like you say, you want
yeah,
to be audit
yeah.
ready.
So
Well, because you're paying attention to that, that is really helpful, especially on the provider side. because if that's saving them time and money and they're more efficient, their operations will run better, more smoothly. They'll have more face-to-face patient time, or what do we call them? Citizens of the communities.
Right.
Whatever the people that live there will get more face time with people because they're not in front of a computer filling out a form. Well, I want to ask, how people get a hold of you. And can you share a scenario when you say, this is when you call me? So if we have an imaginary, family or spouse, child, adult child, when do they call and say, I think we need to understand the landscape. We want you to help us with that.
Right. As well, as soon as possible, right? If
Mhm.
they're aware, oh man, we need help, but we don't know what help we need. And
Okay.
they just go on, on the internet, and then they end up somewhere, and they're going to be talking to somebody that maybe makes their money from, getting, when they place somebody in an assisted living, they get, a
A
commission.
commission of some kind.
Which is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of those agencies, it doesn't cost anything for the person to use that. The commission is paid by the community and stuff. But in order to get that commission, they have to get that person to move into the community. So they, are going
There's
to
an incentive
there's an
yeah.
incentive for them now. So what I do is I don't place people in communities. I don't do any of that. What I do is I explain how the whole puzzle works, what the options are. Say, okay, my mom's living at home,
Mhm.
and so what can caregiving actually do? What can caregiving not do? So is that an option? Okay, do we need to put her into, does she need assisted living or does she need independent living? My mother-in-law, she right now she's in she was at home with a caregiver, and like very similar to what you're talking about. But the caregiver was only there, a few hours, a few days a week, and there was plenty of time for stuff to go wrong, when she wasn't there. So
Mhm.
we put her into an assisted living, and we figured that I'll just take care of it. But then she would not like show up for meals and do that kind of stuff. So then, well, assisted living plus a caregiver, that's looking a little expensive. So then
Mhm.
we downgraded her to independent. We found an independent living facility community. Sorry, there I go saying it myself.
Ha ha ha,
Um,
community.
Independent living, which is by and large, less expensive than assisted living. So independent living plus a caregiver, and she's great because it's the kind of independent living where there's meals provided. You go to the dining room and you sit and eat with all the other.
Community members.
They're usually called residents, and in facilities, especially rehabs and stuff, a lot of them like to call. They don't call them patients; they call them guests. So
Okay.
that's another
You're the
little trick
guest of
there.
bed number 412.
So we've got my mother-in-law. She's in independent living, and she has a caregiver that comes in, a few days a week, just to get her out of the house. They go. She likes to go thrift. She likes to go to thrift stores, and
Yep, yep,
just
yep.
and she, her apartment has a tendency to get cluttered up with stuff like her house did, but that's okay. I mean, it's, you go to the thrift store with $10 and you come home with, six
Mhm,
pieces. So it's not a
mhm,
financial burden at all. Now she does have the memory issues, right? But she's not a flight risk because just mostly because of her personality. It doesn't
mhm,
occur to her to go out the door and just start walking away. It doesn't occur to her to do that.
mhm,
If she was a flight risk, then we would have to put her into a memory care because they have, there's a locked door,
mhm,
between the resident and the outside.
mhm,
But she may not ever get to that point where she's a flight risk, and
mhm,
that's so she may stay in independent living,
mhm.
until
For the rest of her days, yeah.
you know, and we never know, but everyone's different. Other people need a little bit more, slightly more, help. Like they need medication reminders and the occasional, pseudo medical stuff. So they may, be better off in assisted living. Which is kind of like, built in caregivers, not one-on-one caregiving, but
There's a team that's on
and
staff. Yeah.
And then there are people that, they're in assisted living, plus they have a caregiver, but just because the person, forgets that there's a happy hour. They forget, they don't know that they don't have the initiative to go down and to the bingo room and play bingo, or and these communities are always doing, there's an activities director and there's activities, but you have to get out of your room and you have to go. Some of the higher end ones that are more expensive will have, a member on the staff whose job it is just to go and round up everybody to come down for the activity, that type of thing. So it's very much a pay what get what you pay for, kind of situation. And then finding out exactly, but what I'll help people do is I'll explain the whole how it all works to them, so
Mhm.
they're not paying for something they don't need, or paying for something that isn't actually working.
Right,
And it's got to be, we always talk about price, because price is yes or no, can we afford it? That's
right,
so that's what price means.
right,
But my focus is on value. What are you are why we've got mom's got plenty of money, so we're going to put her in this best facility ever. Great. If she's got plenty of money, great. If you're paying for it out of your own pocket, well, we have to do what's within our means. We don't want
right.
our, you know, why I don't want my quality of life to suffer so that my mother can have that great quality of life, but I also don't want her to suffer. So where's the balance?
Happy middle. Yeah, where do you find that middle? And some of the
Right.
prices are outrageous. And then you just wonder that same, paramount question, what is this person's quality of life,
Right.
in this place? If she sits in a room and stares out the window, does it matter that they do bingo? And so, yeah, I think you can, because they're talking to you about their specific situation, even if they've done some initial research on the internet, now they're talking to you about my town, my area, and then my person's actual needs, my budget. And then what can I think about next step and the step after that? So I don't get the surprise I'm in the middle of right now
Right.
that mom can't live at home or whatever that looks like. So how do they get a hold of you?
To get a hold of me, just visit my website. I don't have my phone number or my email address, on my website, just because,
Okay.
everybody, I get enough spam calls already. But there
We
there
get so many spam calls. Okay, so
there's
tell
a
me.
there's a really simple form to fill out,
Okay.
where they can, send me their email. I do not do anything with people's emails except just email them back, have a quick email conversation, and if it seems like the appropriate next step is for us to have a consultation, then we'll do that.
Mhm.
So it's eaglecrestconsulting.com.
Great.
So, www, got to say www if people know you're talking about a website. Eagle, eaglecrestconsulting.com.
Great.
It's
No, that's
it's a
wonderful.
it's a very simple one-page website. A little bit about me, a little bit about what I do, and then a form to fill out. And then, I do charge money for my consultations, but it's
Hmm.
it's very affordable. I don't have a set price, because it's different if I'm doing consulting for somebody that wants to open a hospice company, is going to be a very
Hmm.
different consultation than somebody that has, I don't, my mom's getting older, and we need some kind of an idea of
Sort
what
of
we
B,
do.
B2B,
You know,
business, or B2C, actual consumer who needs some
yeah.
help.
And if the conversation gets them to where it sounds like we really should get in touch with one of those, companies that helps us find the right
Mm-hmm.
independent living, assisted living place, I will recommend, the best, some of the better companies in their area.
For their circumstance, yeah.
Because there are many, there are ones that do it, hands on. They will come and get you and drive you around to the places. There are
Mm-hmm.
other companies that are just purely online, and they'll just set up appointments for you that you can go visit them.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Hmm.
Or maybe you need really, like, the consultation with me was great, but we really need somebody to kind of really take over and almost be like the case manager for
Right.
mother and stuff. And then I
Hmm.
can recommend, companies that do that. There are,
Yeah,
there
there
are,
are senior advocates out there who
yes.
say, no, we just follow up on the Medicare payments and we follow up. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's circumstances are different. And I think one of the things we're reminding people of is once you get set for your circumstances, some time passes and now you're in different circumstances. You
Right.
know, you need a different level of care. So being prepared to have access for information to go down the next steps and have a little forecasting about that can put your mind at ease so that now your bandwidth is used, positively interacting with your person and caring about that.
Right. And I would say, like, my level of consulting, I'm trying to think of a metaphor that makes sense. And one just popped into my head. So, your car breaks down, you're going to take it to a mechanic, right? The more you know about how cars work and how the engine works, the less likely you are to get ripped off by a mechanic, the more likely you are to get the right mechanic and stuff. And so, kind of think of it as that, like, higher level basic understanding of how the internal combustion engine works and how, how that all works. And then when you go, to the mechanic, you can have a conversation. Then they're not going to talk you into, oh, well, you need to change your blinker fluid, or something silly like that, that somebody that knows nothing.
You can go, oh, and that's $80. Okay. Yeah, and we don't even know we're being taken for a ride. And so there's so much else to worry about. Not worrying about the kind of advice you're getting,
Right.
is gives a person so much peace of mind. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm happy that everybody has found out about you and knows how to reach you. And good luck, everyone who finds themselves in those circumstances. It's like at the beginning of a life where you have a baby that doesn't want to sleep and you're up all night. At the end of life, you might be up all night because you want to know you're doing the right thing for an aging parent. And so to have some peace of mind around that is kind of priceless. Chris, it was great to
Absolutely.
talk with you today. And thank you so much. Okay, everybody, we'll see you next
No
time.
problem. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks. Bye bye.